Am I the jerk for moving out of my toxic household without notice? Am I the asshole for moving out of my toxic household without any notice on monthly rent? For the last year, I have been living with my grandparents, aunt, and uncle. The living conditions are nice in terms of the area and the house. However, the behavior is terrible. My grandmother is the source of the problem. She is a bully. To name a few examples, she has destroyed my grandfather's office in a fit of anger, throwing things down from desks and shelves, and breaking technology equipment he uses for his music recording hobby. She has gotten into a rift with my aunt and told her to jump off the roof while my aunt has a medical condition that causes her occasional seizures. The argument was literally over dirty laundry. My uncle has been cursed at for leaving one singular plate in the kitchen sink to soak off the old food gunk so it would be easier to wash later on. I had a bucket on my windowsill to let my clothing dye project soak, and I was called a marga dog, which in patois means skinny dog. The phrase she used was to say, "I am ungrateful." Additionally, when I requested to pay less than the $400 we had agreed to when I lost my job, I was told my money meant nothing and barely even keeps the doors open in our home. In terms of my aunt and uncle, they are close with my grandmother. When I explain my frustrations, their responses are that I have to deep breathe and just let it go. When issues happen between my grandparents, my aunt and uncle come in with loud voices to stop the violent behavior, and then it settles down until it eventually gets forgotten about. When my aunt and uncle had the discussion with me to pay the $400, they were very cold and stern, not allowing me time to speak on why I felt this was a lot for me at the time being. I at least wanted a temporary lesser payment so I can get my life together. No car, no passport, no full-fledged career. The household makes dinner, lunch, and breakfast, and doesn't include me in their meals, even though I am paying into the home. They buy Chinese food, make dinner at home, get food out, and provide for everyone else besides me. I am going on a trip on the 24th and coming back on the 31st. I want to tell everyone I am leaving before my trip so when I return, I can move into a safe place, but I have a very important package delivering while I am gone. And I know they would do something to it if I do this. I want to call her out for all of her hurtful and toxic behavior. It is her influence that makes the house toxic because everyone enables her behavior, and nothing ever changes or gets discussed afterward. Am I the asshole for waiting until the 31st when I come back from my trip to tell them I am leaving and they're not getting any more money from me? I know I have to do what is best for my safety, though I am overall a bit scared about how to move forward with this while still standing up for myself and being honest about why I am leaving. Not saying anything does not want to be an option for me because I need to stand up for myself. That is what it feels like. So tell me, really, is it me? Hey, your post was removed because it violated Rule 5 about violence, even if it was just a mention. Before trying to resubmit, make sure to review the rules and FAQs on the subreddit. If you think the removal was a mistake, message the mods for clarification. Also, you might want to check out r/Finderdit for other subreddits that could fit your post better. Am I the jerk because I wouldn't let my sister's boyfriend use my car? I live in a family of 4. I live at home with my brother and my mother, and we share 2 cars between the 3 of us. My sister moved out and has her own car. Both of our 2 cars are predominantly owned by my brother and mother. If all 3 of us absolutely needed a car and couldn't give each other lifts, I would be the unlucky one and have to use Uber. Recently, my brother and mother have been overseas. I visited my mother overseas. During this time away, we agreed as a favor to let my sister's boyfriend use one of our 2 cars, my brother's predominant one, to help him get to and from work and run errands. My sister has her own car, which she lends to her boyfriend occasionally if he doesn't have access to one of ours. I arrived back early in the morning, and my house is far from the airport. I work that day and need to save time. A drive would take 45 minutes, whereas public transport would take about 2 hours. I asked my sister if she could tell her boyfriend to leave the car at a train station near the airport so I could drive home with it. I have some errands to do before I get to work, and I prefer to do them on the way home from the airport. My sister said she didn't think I needed 2 cars when her boyfriend would need one. She offered to get me an Uber home from the airport and mentioned how her boyfriend sold his scooter, making it hard for him to get to and from work. This also inconveniences her as they share her car more frequently. I don't understand why it's my problem that he sold his scooter since he did that before we offered to let him borrow our car. They should have been prepared to deal with this inconvenience. I decided it wasn't worth the argument, so I thanked her for the Uber offer but chose to take public transport home and drive to work. After I said this in the family group chat, I wrote another message saying that I feel it's one of our cars. Mother, brother, me at the end of the day. Even if we had 20 cars at home, I should still be able to ask for that car back. She responded, "Wow, so you'd have 2 cars and I have none of which you bought." I felt this was unfair as she still has her car, and she didn't buy her car either. My feelings on this matter mainly stem from my belief that for something family-owned, whether it be a car or something else, the usage of that ownership should be prioritized by the family members within, not by members outside of the family. Even if I had another 50 cars in my garage, if I wanted the car back because I liked sitting in it and looking at the rearview mirror for 10 seconds a day, my sister and her boyfriend should return the car without argument or debate. Am I the asshole? You did nothing wrong here. They're treating that car as if it belonged to them and it doesn't. Why should her boyfriend, who isn't even family, get to use the car while you don't? If he needs a car that badly, they should either buy or rent one instead. Would I be the asshole if I don't attend my longest friend's wedding? The groom is my longest friend. He and I met in grade school and went to the same middle school and high school together. We went to separate universities but still remained in occasional contact. He was the one who would reach out first and ask how I was doing. I have a few other friends in the same group from middle school, and they are also groomsmen. He and his fiancée organized a joint bachelor party trip since they are mutual friends with most of the people in the group. They booked an Airbnb in an area about 20 minutes from where I live for 4 nights. They had invited about 20 people and told everyone that they would each have to pay $160 to share the fees for lodging and food. My girlfriend and I agreed to go, but since we were only 20 minutes away from the Airbnb, we asked the groom if we would have a different price since we would not be staying overnight and would only be going there for 2 days. He said he would see what he could do. A few days prior to the trip, he sent a message to the group saying that the price had now doubled to $320 per person because 4 people could not make it to the trip, and that everyone would have to pay the same price regardless of how long they were staying at the place. My fiancé and I found it excessive that the price would just double because of 5 people canceling and concluded that the calculation did not seem right. We needed to pay $640 for both of us. It was also Bio Bay and both of us do not drink. I was confused and called one of our close friends, who was also a groomsman, to ask if he thought the price was reasonable and if he thought that the groom and bride were profiting off of this. I was not accusing the groom and bride of profiting off of everyone. I wanted an explanation as to why the price doubled and might have worded it incorrectly due to my frustration. I did not want to ask the groom directly because he kept telling me how stressed he was, and he was getting annoyed at every small question. The other groomsman completely shut me down and asked how I could even think of such a thing, stating that $320 is very reasonable compared to the cost of other bachelor parties. My fiancé and I went to the Airbnb for 2 days, but the attitude of the other groomsmen and the groom was cold towards us. They refused any time I offered to help with cooking or serving and left me out of their conversations. I paid the $640 on the first day without any complaints. A few days later, the groom called me to talk and said that I was a backstabber. He said that I went behind his back and thought that he was profiting off of me, and that I should have talked to him directly if I had an issue with the price. It turns out the other groomsmen told him about our conversation. I was dropped as a groomsman, but he still wants me to attend his wedding events. I am considering not going to the wedding and reception. Yeah, bad planning on his part shouldn't mean a huge price hike on yours. The appropriate response if you didn't like the new price was, "That's too steep. Sorry, we'll just day trip it." The groom definitely acted poorly by waiting to get your money for the rent before dropping you, which makes it seem like he calculated the cost of those who dropped out and had you pay for the entirety of that cost. For that, it's probably best to skip the wedding. Real friends don't use others to skim money off them. Am I the jerk for not allowing my sibling to store things in my house? I moved next door to my older brother and his wife a year ago. We get along great, so I wasn't concerned. When I first moved here, my brother was excited because it has a 4-stall garage in the backyard, in addition to a tight-fit 2-stall garage attached to the house. My brother and parents made plans for it, assuming I wouldn't need it. He parks his car in the front garage, which I said was fine at first. Shortly after I moved in, my brother moved a bunch of stuff into the garage. My brother has a 1-stall garage and 2 sheds of his own. I was slightly annoyed but let it go because I didn't need the space. I've been trying to live by the motto, don't sweat the small stuff. Over the last year, more junk has accumulated in the garage. He has also put things in my front garage and basement. A few months ago, my boyfriend moved in. He expressed frustration with my brother storing items all over my property. He said if he wants to purchase a boat or camper, it would be frustrating to have the room to store it and not be able to due to the space being full of my brother's things. I've been decluttering my own things in my house lately. I worry that by allowing my brother to store things here when his property is already completely filled with stuff, I am enabling his hoarding habits. Last week, my brother showed up at my house with 2 boxes and asked to store them in my attic. I currently have nothing in my attic, and I said no because I don't want anything in the attic. He seemed disappointed but took the rejection well and left. This past weekend, my boyfriend and I came home to my brother emptying his things out of my back garage and into his sheds. He said he is purchasing a 3rd shed for his bigger items. I could tell he was upset, but he and his wife both insisted he was fine and wouldn't explain what was going on. I finally pried out of his wife that this had all been triggered by me saying no to the boxes, and my brother was hurt and wanted nothing at my house at all anymore. There are still items in the front garage and basement. My sister-in-law is on his side. When I asked if the roles were reversed if she thinks he would be fine with me storing stuff at his house, she said yes he would be. This would never happen because there's no room. My mother is on my brother's side despite recently decluttering her own home. My brother and I's mutual friends are on his side as well, though I don't know what they've been told. The only person who agrees with my point of view is my boyfriend, and he's proud of me for finally setting a boundary. I'm very frustrated with the situation because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. However, I also don't regret my actions because I'm happy with his junk being out of my garage. I'm upset that everyone except my boyfriend thinks I'm the wrongdoer for finally drawing a line about what he can store in my house, which I already feel guilty about. I'm a people pleaser. Am I the wrongdoer? Don't question your good luck and just be happy that your brother moved the stuff out. Of course, the sister-in-law is trying to pressure you to cave. She definitely doesn't want all his junk at her place. He's perfectly capable of storing his own stuff. He'd just rather dump it at your place, which is pretty entitled. This is the most basic definition of a want, not a need, so don't feel bad for setting boundaries. Am I the jerk for being too sensitive about my mom's blatant racism? I, a 17-year-old female, called my mother, a 45-year-old female, to ask when she would be home, at my grandmother's request, as she was a bit late. She informed me that she was just turning onto the road near our house. She then went on to explain that she was late because she had stopped and talked to a couple sitting in a park. The woman in the couple looked distressed. She said she felt like she needed to stop and talk to them. She ended up talking to them, and everything seemed fine. My mother gave them a card for the church she attends, and that's all she told me. She hung up as she was now in the driveway and came inside. After she came in, she decided to continue the conversation as she wanted to tell the story to my grandmother. However, as she told the story, she divulged a detail that she left out. They were Chinese. On the surface, this is no big deal, but growing up in a white, lower-middle-class, conservative Christian household who believe critical race theory is just propaganda and should be removed from schools when the race of someone in a conversation isn't white, you brace for impact. At first, everything was fine. She was talking about what happened, and then I asked, so they stood out because she looked distressed? She said, I only really noticed them because they were Chinese. Silence. I was laughing uncomfortably because usually, she's not so blatant. I was trying to not start an argument, but I also wanted to see if this is what she meant to say, or if maybe she just said it weird. So I said, so if they weren't Chinese, you wouldn't have noticed them? She quickly responded yes. She went on to say that even if she wasn't distressed, she probably would have stopped just because of how out of place they looked. I don't exactly remember how this nugget got dropped, but at one point she said, he was surprisingly handsome for a Chinese person. At this point, I started trying to explain that is in fact not a normal thing to say. To which she said yes it is, and it's in fact not a normal thing to say. To which she said yes it is, and is just her preference. We got into a small argument where she said I was being too sensitive about it, which was broken up by our grandmother needing help with something. The reason I'm here is because I want to know if I was wrong for basically calling her racist. Am I being too sensitive, or is this in fact just blatant racism? I feel like the answer is obvious, but I really don't want to come off as an annoying 17-year-old who just argues with people over something that just isn't that deep. You did nothing wrong here. Your mom's behavior is undeniably racist and inappropriate. Those poor people she stopped and harassed didn't deserve that. Racism runs deep, and it's important to call it out, but maybe pick your battles to be more effective. You're definitely right for recognizing and addressing the issue. Am I the jerk for leaving the trip early after being embarrassed at dinner? Last year, my friend Kelsey moved to a new city about 4 hours away. She invited me to stay for the weekend, and I agreed. While planning, she asked what I wanted to do. I said I didn't mind and that she could arrange whatever. As long as I could hang out with her, it was all good. The one thing I did plan was for us to go to a concert that Sunday afternoon that both of us were looking forward to. Saturday, we went out into the city and walked around. She pointed to various shops, and I agreed to go in and look around. I thought we were having a good time. She did ask me a couple of times what I wanted to do, and I said I didn't know. I told her if she knew of anything fun, she should let me know. But I also said just what we were doing was nice. We walked around, got a bite to eat, and looked at a few shops. Then it was time for dinner with her family. We were supposed to meet them at a specific train station, but they missed their train. Kelsey seemed irritated, but I figured it was due to that and worried we'd miss our reservations. I tried to assure her it'd be okay, and even called the restaurant to say we'd be a little late. When her parents arrived, she went and sat next to her mom on the train, glaring at me the entire way to the restaurant. I was really confused as it was a complete turnaround in her behavior. As we were sitting down to eat, her mother asked what we did that day. Before I could speak, Kelsey said, nothing. She didn't know what she wanted to do. I chuckled a little and was going to say I had a good time, but Kelsey interrupted and said, it's not cute. It was actually really annoying. I was taken aback because she hadn't mentioned being annoyed all day. She made little jabs at me for not coming up with ideas. Even her parents were side-eyeing her. It was pretty embarrassing. I didn't know what to do. If she had said something earlier, we could have talked. But I didn't want to make things more awkward for her family. The whole dinner, she gave me nasty looks. Eventually, we parted ways with her family and went back to my hotel. She was still irritated. I asked where this came from and why she didn't bring it up all day. She told me that it shouldn't be up to her to plan everything. I was taken aback because she never once asked me to plan anything. Come morning, I reached out to her to ask what time we were leaving for the concert. She gave me an attitude. I finally said, you know what? I'll forward you your ticket and sell mine. If you're still this irritated with me, I don't think we should go. Suddenly, she started crying, saying I was being unfair and that I should just apologize. I said I did apologize at dinner and at the hotel for not coming up with things to do, but I was also happy with what she did and she should have communicated better. I did as I promised and left. I was able to get a refund from the venue for my ticket. I got an early train back. Kelsey is still very upset with me and says she wasn't wrong. Am I the asshole? Nothing you have done here makes me think you are the jerk here. You were in an unfamiliar city and relied on your friend to guide you to things you both would enjoy. Instead, she chose activities that only seemed to boost her own annoyance. Her frustration was self-inflicted, and you made the right call to step away since there was no pleasing her at that point. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.